Officially under a week to go before the start of the Canadian Premier League, and we continue looking into teams, our previews. Today it's Forge and, yes, the newly rebranded York United. But let's begin with Forge FC. They've won the first 2 titles in the first 2 years. Ollie, I wonder, is there an argument to be made against Forge going for the hat trick?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of arguments you can make. I do think they are the strongest team on paper in the Canadian Premier League. They have tons of continuity from last year, which is going to be important this season as well. But there's a couple of arguments you can make. One, most obviously, is preseason. They haven't really had one. So they're going to be building up, at the start of this season. How will that affect them in the longer term remains to be seen. If they have injury problems early on as a result of the lack of a preseason, that could hurt them. So that's going to be a factor, and one that Bobby Smyrniotis is going to have to get around. And then the second thing, I think, is the CONCACAF League. That's a competition that, depending on how deep Forge goes, could run all the way through to December. And I think it's going to be a real focus for them. I think that for them, of course, the league is their priority. You always want to win your league title first and foremost above everything else. But continental football for them is the next frontier, right? That's the thing that they think can really push this club forwards, is playing in the Champions League and mixing it with the best this region has to offer. So I think that's going to be a real focus for them. And is whether those two factors can take away from the focus or, their ability to go through a full 28-game Canadian Premier League season that I think will define whether or not they're in the mix again at the end of the year.
In the Canadian Championship as well. Look, When I look at this squad on paper, I say, wow, this might be the best group of players we've seen on a Canadian Premier League team thus far. Like, their squad is ridiculously deep. There's diversity amongst the talent. There's flexibility in terms of the way you want to play. I don't even know how Bobby Smyrniotis is going to get all these players into the team and how he might use them. Because he has so many different players that can play so many different positions. Just in the attacking positions alone. Babuli, Browne, Navarro, Chouanier, Sabac, Nanko, Borges. Does Becker have to go play more? Like, how do you get all these players into the team? I don't know, Andy. I just look at their squad, and with all due respect to everyone else, there's some other very good sides in the Canadian Premier League. This one is stacked, locked, and loaded to make it 3 in a row.
You just mentioned some of the names. A lot of people have become household names now because they've been victorious in the last 2 seasons between Kyle Becker, Chouanier. You've got Kwame Owuah, Tristan Henry between the sticks as well. But if we're looking at newcomers on this roster, Gareth, who should we be keeping an eye on?
He's a newcomer this year, but he should be the most familiar name and face to everyone in the Canadian Premier League. It's Borges, it's gorgeous. Tristan Borges is back. 12 goals. What's that, still second or third best in the Canadian Premier League? And he didn't play in the Island games? 5 assists as well in that first season. He was that good. Now he comes back. He has a replacement in the team, Paulo Sabac. I don't know how both of them are going to play together. What role is Tristan Borges going to play? Is he going to play inside? Is he going to play outside? There's going to be big expectations. Remember, he went to Belgium. He only played 4 or 5 games. It didn't work out there. I think the player has a lot to prove coming back home. The league has improved as well. And Borges is hoping for a player who scored his last goal October 26th of 2019. There's some pressure for him to produce, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, there's not much to choose from in terms of Forge incomings because there's only 4 of them, but they all look like big impact signings, right? Jakovic, Brown, Borges, and the one I'll go for is Joshua Navarro. I think he's a really intriguing young player from Costa Rica. I think looking at the roster, he can play all the way across the front line. He might play through the middle, I think, because Mo Babuli is the only other recognized striker they've got on the roster. And this is the start for Forge of trying to scout in CONCACAF, trying to uncover some of the top young players from Central America and bring them up here to Canada, firstly to strengthen the squad in the Canadian Premier League, to find some talent they can potentially sell on in the future. But again, it all comes back to CONCACAF League, CONCACAF Champions League, and the priority that Forge and Bobby Smyrniotis in particular put on that competition. They want some talent that knows the region and knows how to play in those games, can be difference makers in those games. And I think in Navarro and Brown, they're hoping they have a couple of them.
It's the classic question, gentlemen, as we turn our attention now to York United. Ollie, are they pretenders or contenders?
This might be the toughest one to call. I have to call them pretenders because I simply don't know with a lot of their roster, right? I think the back line with Ensa, Absi, Thompson, Zator, Giantsopoulos in the mix with Nathan Ingham in goal, I think that's a very, very strong part of the team. That could be the best defence in the Canadian Premier League if it all clicks. But further forward, it's just a ton of unknown. I think that's kind of the point as far as York United are concerned. They don't want to sign players who are kind of established and proven but have a limited ceiling. They want to uncover talent before anyone else sees it. So they're trying to sign a lot of young Canadian players with very little or no pro experience. They're trying to bring in players from all over the world and find some potential, some untapped potential there. But it just makes them impossible to project in terms of what they're going to do. As I say, I have to say pretender because I just don't know, there's not enough proven pieces for me to say that this team can contend with someone like Forge.
And multiple of their foreign players haven't been able to get into the country at least to start the season. So when will they arrive? Will they arrive? We've seen other players unable and bowing out of their contracts really based on mutual consent across the Canadian Premier League. Will this happen with York? My biggest question is, are the young players they're bringing in better than the experienced players that they've let go? And there's no way of knowing right now without a proven track record to show for. Like, you replace Gasparotto, who played every minute, by the way, for you last season at center back, and you bring in Zator. Okay. You bring in Ensa, who might be a better center back than right back. Maybe he's better on the right, and replace Maury Donor, who was very good. So look at the midfield, completely changed. That was a position of great stability, great depth, and now you're kind of waiting to see what it's all about. So it's hard to call them a contender without knowing what this team's going to be all about. And by the way, they just landed in Winnipeg. It's a huge task for Jimmy Brennan right now to bring this new team together that's made so many changes, bring them together so quickly.
Yeah, we'll see how they gel because they're going to have to hit the ground running. But you mentioned some of the new guys that they brought on board because we've seen a lot of turnover with York. Gareth, which one in particular are you keeping your eye on could be a difference maker?
Let's go Dominic Zator. I'm going to stick with a guy with Canadian Premier League credentials because he has been one of the best center backs in this league, but with Cavalry oftentimes played the right side of a 3. I mean, he did play in a 2 in the Island Games, and they did play that way from time to time, but that is really where he shined. And he went to Sweden. He only played 5 games. And the 2 games where he started and played the full 90 were his final 2 games. So there wasn't a lot of experience that he gained there from a playing perspective, off-field, sure. But it's time that player puts himself in the shop window because that's why he left Cavalry in the first place. He wanted to see what else was out there with eyes of going overseas. York United gave him that opportunity. He's coming back. He has to make an impression this time around. So we'll see if Zator for York United is as successful as Zator was for Cavalry.
Yeah, I've gone with Chris Nabik-Ensa for much the same reasons. I think he's maybe flown under the radar a bit because the Zator edition was so big. But this is a 22-year-old in his 3rd season now. I think one of the best young players in the Canadian Premier League. But he's taken a risk here, right? He's left the Halifax Wanderers team, maybe due to salary cap reasons. I'm sure he was in line for a raise after the season he had in PEI. And he's gone to a York United team and put, his future in their hands, right? In the hands of a different situation, a different club, than one that was progressing very, very well for him in Halifax. So it's a risk. I think York could be a great place for him. He's going to be a key player. It's a club with a very, very clear desire to develop players and then to sell them on. He's going to get to play with his younger brother, Felix, as well, who's another highly rated prospect. But he is taking a risk, right, by having that change of scenery on the back of arguably a team of the season caliber year last year at the Island Games.